Vancouver property rights are now in question, and that's thanks to two agreements that were signed. One provincially with the Cowichan Nation and David Eby and the NDP, and the second one most recently in February, the Musqueam Nation and the federal government with Mark Carney and the Liberals. No matter if you are a buyer or a seller, there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of people who are very scared and nervous of what this is going to do to their properties. I think this is a direct correlation as to why 2026 is actually starting off slower than 2025, is because there is a lot of concern out there in the marketplace. I hear it from some of my clients, not overwhelmingly, but it's still there. And then in the YouTube comments as well, people are talking about this on every single video I make, so I wanted to address it today. I listened to an interview from Steve Suretsky, who interviewed Tom Isaac, who's an Aboriginal law expert, and wanted to bring some of those findings to you directly so that you have proper information and understanding what is going on. These two agreements are different, how they are structured and who they are with, and they have some consequences as well that we're going to be able to dive into. So let's get into what is happening and what is going on right now. So a federal agreement was signed on February 20th, 2026 between the federal government and the Musqueam, and how it was laid out has caused a lot of suspicion and why it has caused a lot of misinformation out there as well. There's over 3 million people that are affected with this agreement. It was signed, as I mentioned, on February 20th, 2026 on a Friday right before a long weekend, and there was virtually zero mainstream media for over a week. It was really slid in there right on the back end of a long weekend, and it didn't get the play. And because of that, people did not like how that was handled. That was done in a very sneaky way, especially when we live in a democracy. And if you are talking about these federal agreements, how did the public not understand this? How did the public not know this was going on? And even David Eby, who is the leader in chief here in British Columbia, he also stated that he did not know that these talks were taking place either. So what does this agreement actually state? And there are differences between the Cowichan agreement and the Musqueam one, and this one has a lot more ambiguity to it. Well, first and foremost, it recognizes rights and title recognition. The government of Canada formally acknowledges Musqueam Aboriginal rights and title within their asserted territory. They state that UNDRIP is the minimum standard. What is UNDRIP? It is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and within that, Canada agrees that UNDRIP applies as the minimum standard of implementation going beyond existing federal legislation. The territory scope is very large. You have Vancouver, North Shore, Richmond, Vancouver Harbour, Stanley Park, and the watershed area. And something that is very interesting here, the agreement points at a map and says there is title somewhere here, but does not define where. And that's where some of these question marks come into play. What are politicians saying across the country, and what does this agreement actually prove? So what the claim is, the Musqueam chief states that the agreement only deals with federal lands. The federal minister states that private lands are not on the table. The implication are that homeowners are protected. But what the agreement shows is quite the opposite here. And again, these are insights from Tom Isaac, who is the expert in Aboriginal law. States that the agreement shows that this is not accurate. Nothing in the agreement limits its scope to federal lands. It's not verifiable. Agreements does not specify where title applies or excludes, and it's unconfirmed. The document creates ambiguity, not protection. And this is why there are a lot of people who are very concerned with this agreement. So now let's get into the court decision that changed everything and how this Cowichan agreement came to be. So you can see the BC Supreme Court ruled in the fall of 2025 that Aboriginal title is prior and senior to existent private property rights, effectively superseding fee simple ownership. The combined effect states that federal title acknowledgement across Metro Vancouver plus court ruling that title supersedes private ownership equals maximum legal uncertainty. In the Cowichan decision specifically, there's a lot less ambiguity. It headlines this head on, and it shows that Aboriginal title does supersede private ownership in those areas. So the real world impact with this is that 150 homeowners in the Cowichan claim area have been told their properties are effectively unsaleable. This is the template for what Metro Vancouver could face at scale because of the ambiguity in the agreement and the precedent that has been set with this Cowichan agreement. If we go to the bigger picture and really see a timeline of how this came to pass and how are we now in this situation, we can see a year of body blows to property certainty in BC. Number one, we had the Haida Agreement, where every square inch of the Queen Charlotte Islands transferred to 4,500 people, no public interest protection. Number two, Cowichan decision in the fall of last year, Aboriginal title declared senior to private property by BC Supreme Court. We have the Heritage Conservative Act amendments, where proposed changes added further layers of uncertainty to landowners. Number 4, BC Court of Appeal and the UNDRIP ruling. The decision of UNDRIP's interaction with BC legislation expands its reach. And number 5, the federal Musqueam agreement. Most far-reaching to date, title acknowledgement across all Metro Vancouver. And you can see how things have been getting more and more aggressive in terms of this land titles and in terms of UNDRIP and the overall reaching of these agreements with the Aboriginal parties here as well. So let's talk about how this was handled, because Canadian citizens, especially people who live in this Vancouver area, are very, very upset with how this came to pass. First, it was a buried release. It was signed on a Friday, February 20th, and the Friday before a long weekend, a classic low visibility release window. There was media silence. Only the Daily Hive and Juno News, an independent news agency, reported this initially. Mainstream media ignored it for over a week. The story then went viral on social media before any major outlet covered it, and the public forced the narrative, which is never good in a situation like this. There's also a push and pull between David Eby and the federal government, where David Eby stated he was never briefed. The federal government said that they briefed him weeks ago, and Eby's office stated he was there as MLA, not as a premier. So as a Vancouver citizen, how are we being protected? If our leader says that he was not briefed, the federal government says he was. So when you live here in BC and you take a step back, obviously there's going to be a lot of people who are very concerned with how this was handled. We feel that we are not being supported by a premier. We're feeling that we're not being supported by the federal government. And this is not a political statement. When you're talking about people's homes, which is their most personal asset, that's where their security comes from, you need to be communicating this to the masses of what is going on so people can understand this fully. Because of how this was taken down, there's so much misinformation out there and no one really understands how this is going to develop, and this was handled very, very poorly by the federal government. When we talk about market impact, we're seeing things play out in real time, especially those affected with that Cowichan decision. We've already seen this from Tom Isaac's perspective, a 20 to 25% property decline over the past 12 months. We have around $1.4 billion in distressed real estate transactions. When we look at the numbers from 2023 to 2024 to 2025, we're already in an environment that is very problematic. And now throwing these land title changes is going to make everything worse. With those affected by the Cowichan decision, the BC government has also put out a $150 million emergency fund to stand behind to help with those mortgage renewals to be able to fund them. That shouldn't be the case of the province to stand up. This is a decision that they agreed upon, and they did not take into consideration the after effect of all this. The market is effectively frozen until we get clarity, says Tom Isaac, and BC appraisers are now adding in land claim clauses to property valuations, and property valuations are starting to come in lower because of all of this as well, because there's so much uncertainty, and as a lender and as a creditor, they're not going to want to touch this. This is going to be very, very risky for them. Why are they going to want to lend out $1 million mortgage if property pricing could fall 10 to 20% because of these decisions? So Tom Isaac has pointed out to 3 things to watch out for moving forward to see how this landscape is really going to play out. Obviously, there's going to be appeals here. People are not happy. People want to have this brought back to the courts so that we have better insights and better management of these decisions. We should not be having politicians such as David Eby, Mark Carney, and political parties deciding what fee simple ownership is going to look like in this country, especially when people have spent hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on their property. So the first one is going to be the Cowichan appeal. If it's upheld, Aboriginal title is senior to fee simple everywhere in BC, including that Musqueam area. It's going to set precedent. If it's overturned, it's going to change the entire legal calculus, obviously, in terms of how these agreements are going to be put together. Number 2 is the Squamish Nation challenge. The Squamish Nation were not consulted on the Musqueam agreement and potential legal grounds to unravel portions of the deal. There are so many things that are overlapping and don't make sense. So for example, the Cowichan territory is inside the Musqueam territory agreement. So who supersedes that and who has right of passage when it comes between those 2 treaties? How does that play out? There are other Aboriginal nations that were not consulted either, who are probably not happy with these decisions and wanting their interests represented as well. Then there's the DRIPA appeal as well. Growing political discussion about repealing BC's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, and it could reduce UNDRIP's leverage because UNDRIP does have a lot of pull with these decisions. Now, how should property owners adjust in this market? And this is some advice from Tom Isaac, who is the expert in Aboriginal law. So he lays out a couple different scenarios here. So if you're a current homeowner, the key risk, obviously, panic selling at point of maximum uncertainty is locking in losses. This is at the height of all this land use. No one knows how this is going to play out. People are going to spell desperation. And as a realtor, you don't want to be in that position where you're behind the eight ball in those negotiations. His advice would be preserve optionality and hold if financially able. Number two, a prospective buyer. Title uncertainty not priced into most listings at this point. The recommended action here is factor risk into offers and consult Aboriginal Law Counsel. And this is a new arena as a realtor. We've never had to have these discussions. We've never had to put on our vendor list an Aboriginal law expert to be able to help with offers. So this is new for everybody. Number three, development landholder. You are at the highest exposure from his opinion, bare land, no income, carrying debt, and the title unknown. Seek specialist legal advice immediately because options are starting to narrow. So the key takeaway here, maximum uncertainty does not equal maximum risk. The legal framework is still in motion. The final outcome has not been determined. And these determinations could take months and months and years, because if you think that these nations got into these agreements with the provincial and federal governments, if these are overturned, I'm sure they're going to appeal that too. So it's going to really take some time here to understand how this is going to really play out. And bottom line here, and you can see it on red, this is the most significant challenge to private property rights in Metro Vancouver's history. The agreement is real and it is broad. Title recognized across Metro Vancouver, and the boundary of what it covers is legally undefined, which is horrendous. Number two, the courts have already moved. Cowichan confirmed title is senior to fee simple. Metro Vancouver could follow. Number three, the market is responding. Distressed transactions are tripling. Appraisers adding clauses. $150 million emergency fund created. These are all plans enacted to help support with these decisions that were agreed upon. And number four, which is the most important, the legal outcome is still open. Watch what happens with the Cowichan appeal, the Squamish challenge, and the DRIPA repeal movement. This will determine everything. And from my perspective, I haven't been too concerned about it. First and foremost, it's completely out of my hands. This is in the courts now. This is offloaded to people much smarter than I, that I'm going to rely on some of this decision making and hoping that we come to a sensible agreement with all this. And if you think about it at a bigger picture, I have a very hard time thinking that all the donors who donate to these political parties, a lot of the people who generate wealth, especially in this country, the political donors to both the NDP, to the Liberal Party, they have a lot of wealth in real estate. I have a hard time believing people who are propping up political parties with millions of dollars of donations would be okay with their property values just being completely dismissed if they are here in British Columbia and having their net worth go downward. And keep in mind, if this decision does get upheld, this is going to move all across the country. There's already land claim notices put out in Ontario. There's one in Kamloops as well. This is going to continue to move forward. And even in Alaska, there are native nations who are now making claims to their heritage grounds here in BC. So David Eby has really opened up a can of worms. The federal government did nothing better, and keeping everything in the shadows without making the proper disclosures to the public was the wrong choice. And now we're in this tangled mess here. So keep your eyes peeled, make sure that you're getting information from the source, and we will see what happens in the months and years to come here.